In this video, I'm going to be talking about 5 books I listened to or read, 4 of the books I listened to on YouTube. A subscription to YouTube is totally worthwhile if you want to spend any amount of time on there, if your time is worth anything. The first book, so I'll talk about a little bit of background to it. Over a year ago, one of my relatives was digging into some family history of ours, some genealogy, and I found out that I have Waldensians in my ancestry. So out of curiosity, I started digging into who they were. It turns out I had read a little bit about them in some stuff I read about martyrs, but you know, never did I think that they were actually connected to me in some way personally. So the book was called The History of the Waldenses by J.A. Wiley. It was at least 4 hours long. It's broken into 18 chapters plus a preface. First published in 1860. The book has just beautiful language in it. It's a history book, basically, of the Waldenses, and covers about, if I remember right, about 1,000 years of what they went through and who they were. And so I listened to it with my children, but just a word of caution. There's a lot of scenes of just intense brutality. So basically, the Catholic Church persecuted them because they wouldn't partake of the Mass, and they were also evangelistic. They were spreading. They published a Bible in their own language, and they were disseminating it throughout Europe. They're really a precursor to the Reformation, but they were heavily persecuted for it. So it's totally worthwhile listen, even if you don't have any connection to them personally. And it's actually the 16th book of a set of 24 by that author. And the 24 books were the history of the Protestantism. Difficult word. The second book, also, I listened to it on YouTube. The Art of the Deal by Donald Trump, and actually it's narrated by himself. That adds a special touch to it. Published in 1987, 9 minutes, 25 seconds long. Sorry, 9 hours, 25 minutes long, so almost 9.5 hours. And it just talks about his personal life and dealings. Obviously, Donald Trump has been in the consciousness of Americans, especially in the past 8 years. But I got to know him way better, like way, way better, just listening to that book. Listen to it with my children. It's appropriate for anybody of any age. The third book, Robinson Crusoe by Daniel Defoe. This is an old book. It's first published in 1719, and it was really the first novel ever written. It was really a pioneer work of writing. It kind of was the pattern for all modern novels following it. It was also a YouTube audiobook. It was a longer one, 11 hours and 25 minutes. And so I sort of knew the story of Robinson Crusoe. My mom had read the book when I was a child to me and my siblings. And so I knew it as sort of an adventure story or survivalist story. But and I'm not sure. I think she must have read the abridged version. but we listened to the whole thing, obviously. Um, and what I really appreciated about it is really my favorite book out of these five that I'm talking about. Um, is the times when he contemplated life and God on a really deep level. Really went over probably most of the um, crucial theological issues that someone faces in their life. So I highly recommend that one. The fourth one is kind of an oddball book for me. It just came up in my feed. I was driving late one night. Um, I decided to give it a listen. It's called The Manipulated Man by Esther Villar, published in 1971. It's 5 hours, 1 minute long. Um, Definitely not a book for children. Do not listen to it with your children. It's not that she's intentionally crude or anything, but um, she just doesn't hold back on any of the adult themes of the book. Uh, it has to do with her understanding of male and female relationships. Um, I'm sure it's the harshest book I've ever listened to. Um, and I mean, much of the premises I wouldn't agree with based on evolution and, as far as I could tell, uh, atheism. Um, but her perspectives, her insights into culture and relationships is really interesting. The most interesting insight that I thought she had is she predicted that women would leave the church. And it was kind of an interesting coincidence. It was right before or after, right around the same time that I listened to her book. Um, I also heard a Barna study on the local Christian radio station that talked about the huge increase of numbers of women leaving churches. That was a surprise to a lot of people. So it's just interesting the accuracy of her prediction. The fifth book, entitled The Saving Life of Christ by Major W. Ian Thomas. I'm not sure when this book was written, probably at least 30 years ago. And I had actually first read it I spent some time in Germany probably 3-4 years ago. Actually, the last time I was there. I usually do a lot of reading when we go there. Um, it's just a book of theology, obviously. And usually when you read a book or listen to it, mostly I listen to books now on long drives. But usually from each book you get some, if you're lucky, you get some pearl that you hang on to for a while. And usually each book, after a month or a year, you can only remember one thing if you're lucky. Um, the one really valuable thing in this book, he talks a lot about Israel as God's son, and how that is a picture, Israel collectively or cumulatively, is a picture of the child of God, and you could say the New Testament child of God specifically, or any child of God throughout the Old or New Testament periods, um, and how Israel collectively is a picture of God's son individually. Um, so just to color in that picture a little bit for you, Israel was first called of God, and then they were called out of they were called to God through Abraham, and then they were called out of Egypt, out from the power of Pharaoh, which is a picture of the world, and Satan. They were redeemed of God by the blood of the Lamb on the doorpost and the lintel. They were brought out of Egypt, never to return collectively. They were brought through the Red Sea, a picture of baptism. They wandered in the wilderness, striving to enter the promised land, which is a picture of the victorious Christian life. And then they were, at times lost their place in the land. They never lost the promise. They never lost their position as God's son, but they at times lost their fellowship. For example, in the Syrian captivity or the Babylonian captivity, or in the period after the Bible was written in 70 AD, when Jerusalem was destroyed by the Romans and they were dispersed throughout the earth. But they always remained God's son, despite God's chastening because of their rebellion and idolatry. So there's my list of 5 books.